The intrauterine device is a contraceptive device placed in the uterine cavity and consists mainly of metal and plastic. It achieves contraception by preventing the fertilized egg from implanting. Compared to short-acting forms of contraception, contraceptive pills and condoms, it has better effectiveness and a higher contraceptive success rate. It is more reversible than sterilization. Compared with abortion, it brings less harm to women's bodies. A prototype of the IUD, the pessary, appeared in the late Victorian period. In 1884, Julius C. Petit was granted a patent for his womb battery invention. At the time, however, the pessary was used primarily for mechanical abortions, not birth control. Until the 19th century, the concepts of population changed the naturally permissive view of birth that had been influenced by people's traditional religious thinking, and the birth control movement flourished. In September 1909, the first true IUD was introduced in an article by Dr. Richard Richter from Germany. 30 years after this, contraception became widely available, and the IUD, in contrast to the condom, put reproductive autonomy back in women's hands, separating sexuality from involuntary procreation, marking a transition from the strict sexual ethics of the Victorian era to a more sexually tolerant society. Access to contraceptive knowledge is undoubtedly determined by the surrounding social, economic, and cultural environment, and the political environment and prevailing values in different regions of the country are similarly reflected in widely differing attitudes towards contraception and birth control. In the context of the thriving feminist movement, contraceptive products, including the IUD, were seen as an important means of achieving sexual liberation. IUDs continued to be improved and popularized until the 21st century. The Lips loop, the second plastic IUD invented by Dr. Jack Lips in the 1960s, was capable of causing a sustained retraction of a woman's uterine cavity using the inflammatory states to avoid pregnancy. Due to its lower cost and once-and-for-all nature, the IUD has greater advantages for social policy implementers. According to United Nations report, IUDs account for 16.8% of all contraceptive use globally and are the most commonly used method in 14 countries, particularly in Central and East Asia. This is also related to the introduction of modern contraceptive methods in many countries as a result of early family planning program policies. After this, the copper-containing IUD and the hormone-releasing IUD came into being against the backdrop of the birth control movement in the US. The implantable IUD designed by Dr. Doug Waldmirsch has become a landmark of intrauterine birth control in recent decades. During China's family planning period, the IUD became a policy implementation tool because it was efficient, economical, and reversible, and women of childbearing age in the 1980s became the first group of people to use the IUD in China. Today, IUDs are still the preferred method of birth control for nearly half of all couples in China. Despite the safety and efficacy of the IUD being recognized by clinical results, it still suffers from easy expulsion and inconvenient use during menstruation. At the same time, the IUD is difficult to place and remove, causing many serious infections. With the increase in urbanization level and the popularization of contraceptive knowledge, modern young people are in a gradual transition from the idea of pursuing equality between men and women to equality in reproduction, and attaching more importance to women's will. IUDs are no longer enough to satisfy those women who are in pain and bleeding. This has led to research into more effective methods of contraception, such as the male hormonal contraceptive pill, to increase the efficacy of the existing techniques and to reduce the suffering of women. IUDs do not interrupt a woman's education due to an unwanted pregnancy, and by promoting women's value-oriented development of their own careers. In summary, through the above ideological, cognitive, and technological changes, the IUD has shaped technology in a new way on social and cultural levels. However, throughout the history of human birth control, the IUD has undoubtedly triggered many moral and gender rights controversies. Does the IUD have morals? Referring to the philosopher of technology, Peter Paul Verbeek's view on the moralization of technology, the answer is yes. First, the IUD is a moral entity. As a technological artifact, the IUD participates in ethical decision-making when deciding whether or not to use birth control, materializing morality alongside human beings and producing ethics. This is evidenced by birth control in China during the family planning period. Through the technologically meditated IUD, policymakers prevented women from conceiving and controlling women's reproductive rights. This decision-making behavior, ostensibly to control the population and develop the economy, suggests the moral tradition of political power over women's human rights. As a moral entity, the IUD contributes to moral decision-making together with human beings. Second, the IUD represents a form of free will, proving the morality of the technology. The IUD helps women construct multiple levels of freedom. On the physical level, the IUD provides an infertile environment for the female uterus. On the social level, women who have the IUD enjoy a variety of benefits such as household registration, schooling, and housing in Chinese society. In this way, the IUD affects and changes how its users interact and perceive the world and is also subject to moral judgments. Under the impetus of technological morality, IUDs have been constantly renewed, and up to the present day, their functions are not only contraceptive, but also have specific therapeutic effects. For example, the levonorgestrel intrauterine sustained release system, commonly known on the mainland as Mineral, can treat a wide range of gynecological disorders including adenomyosis and endometriosis. However, while recognizing its positive effects, we also need to look at the paradox of right through the various impacts it has had in its historical development. Achieving the separation of sexuality and involuntary reproduction is extremely important for women, but we must see the other side of the coin. From the feminist perspective, the IUD empowers women to make decisions about their own bodies, but at the same time, it takes that power away. In other words, women are trading in their reproductive freedom by temporarily sacrificing their fertility and part of their health. The process of procreation cannot take place without the participation of both sexes. Throughout history, however, women have not only been subjected to the physical pain and social pressures of childbearing, but have also often been the main bearers of damaging forms of contraception, such as abortion, the pill, and the IUD. The seemingly emancipatory nature of technology inadvertently conceals the deprivation of the body's rights to make decisions. This paradox reflects the phenomenon in the field of techno-ethics. The freedom created by the involvement of technology in ethical decision-making is not entirely freedom. As Verbeek points out, implying that freedom entails the ability to be aware of one's own existential space. However, the IUD not only restricts procreation, but also limits the fullness of human perception, influenced by the legal and moral implications of technology. According to Merleau-Ponty, when humans perceive the world, the experience of the body is highly degraded. Experiencing the immediate female sexual freedom and even social and legal approval that the IUD brings, women are more likely to ignore the physical pain that the IUD may cause in the future, not to mention men, as this pain perception will not happen to them. This crippling perception brings nothing but crippling freedom. We are our bodies. The sensations and emotions felt in the body shape how humans perceive the world. As the phenomenology of perception endeavors to illustrate, ignoring perception and treating women's bodies only as material objects means that people are exposed to a one-sided world. There is no denying that IUD does take women's suffering into account in the process of continuously updating the technology. Still, it does not change the default perception that it is women who bear the consequences of sex and reproduction. Both technology and society should address the feelings of individual women to protect their subjectivity from being the first victim to suffer.